The Prince and Princess of Wales have now made their first statement to the public. Camilla was positive that Prince William and Catherine would never dare to do what they did. They verified her departure from Windsor Lodge 5 minutes ago. The locks are once again under the jurisdiction of the palace. Her staff has been dismissed and the keys she used as evidence of her enduring power have been taken away. However, her departure is hardly the most combustible aspect. William and Catherine decided she could no longer stay because of this. Camilla had been acting as if she owned Windsor Lodge for weeks. She authorized expensive renovations, removed long-serving employees, limited family access, and started showcasing the house to visitors as though Charles had given it to her permanently. At first, no one opposed her. She was able to continue because of the silence. Then Catherine noticed the first thing Camilla didn't think anyone would notice. A number of personal items belonging to Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana had vanished from their storage rooms. They weren't lost. Under instructions connected to Camilla's office, they had been wrapped, tagged, and placed in storage. It had not been approved by William. No one had consulted Catherine. It wasn't until one terrified employee discreetly broke ranks that the family was informed. The war was completely altered by just one revelation. What once appeared to be decorating now appeared to be an effort to supplant the lodge's previous identity with Camilla's own authority. The portraits were moved. The guest rooms were rearranged. Family plans were abruptly cancelled. When employees questioned the directives, they were informed that the Queen was now in charge of the residence. Catherine didn't blow up. She took a much riskier action. She requested the documents. Lists of storage started to come in. Renovation requests, access guidelines, staffing adjustments, and formal objections from home managers all followed. Certain items could not be relocated without family consent. According to one notice, that warning was sent to Camilla's office. Nevertheless, the relocation was carried out. William came into the story at that point. He discovered that one sealed box held a Diana-related artifact which he assumed had been shielded from removal without his awareness. This was no longer a room or furniture dispute for William. It tested the boundaries of Camilla's authority, palace protocol, and family memory. He was looking for a single response. Who issued the last directive? A junior assistant was not the end of the paper trail. After passing via Camilla's private office and overcoming 2 objections, it resulted in a series of directives that regarded Windsor Lodge as her own domain. The fact that royal resources had been utilized to promote unapproved alterations was even more concerning. Camilla was put in a situation by that revelation that she was unable to justify with formality or prestige. Catherine made an effort to prevent the dispute from going public. In a private message, she asked Camilla to put the renovations on hold while the family reviewed everything, restore the objects that had been taken away, and reverse the access restrictions. Camilla gave a chilly reply. She asserted that she now had control of Windsor Lodge. Catherine ought to concentrate on her own home. Camilla was unaware of the full extent of the harm caused by that response. In order to prevent Charles from being humiliated and the family from becoming divided, Catherine had approached her in private. Camilla rejected her and doubled down instead of taking a step back. In a matter of days, the lodge was described as Camilla's permanent residence in a new set of instructions. Another family visit was cancelled and additional staff members were relocated. However, proof is needed for permanency. Palace officials anticipated finding a formal grant, a lease amendment, or a written directive from Charles. When William demanded the original occupation paperwork, none were discovered. Instead, they discovered a conditional agreement that was contingent upon ongoing family consent and appropriate usage of the home. There was a sentence in the text that Camilla's office had missed. The agreement might be revoked if the royal resources, employees, or property were abused. William and Catherine had stopped questioning whether Camilla had gone too far by the end of the evening. They were getting ready to demonstrate it. All of the warnings, invoices, storage lists, and cancelled access notices were combined by Catherine into a single file. William requested a thorough examination. Officials had already started looking into the clause that could take Camilla's residence away from her while she continued to act as if no one could remove her from Windsor Lodge. Catherine's initial reaction was containment rather than retribution. She took the quiet path because she was aware of how easily a private dispute might turn into a public spectacle and that Charles would be put in the middle as soon as Camilla felt challenged. A message was sent asking for a quiet discussion away from employees, away from cameras, and away from the individuals who were already murmuring in Windsor's hallways. The meeting didn't last long. First, Catherine held up the missing items. She clarified that a number of items associated with Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana had been relocated without permission, and that family access was starting to be impacted by staff changes. She just requested that the removals be halted until William and the household administration could examine what had transpired. She made no accusations or threats. Camilla did not back down. She answered with the assurance of someone who thought the issue had already been resolved. She said that she now had control over Windsor Lodge. She made the hiring decisions. She was in charge of the remodeling. Camilla believed that Catherine ought to concentrate on her own home and cease meddling in matters that no longer affected her. The room's temperature was altered by that sentence. In order to avoid embarrassment, Catherine had entered the conversation. The restraint was viewed by Camilla as a sign of weakness. There was no apology for the items taken away, no concern for the impacted family members, and no indication that the modifications would be reviewed. Rather, Catherine received a warning that was passed off as a dismissal. Take a step back to avoid making the situation more awkward. Catherine, however, did not retreat. The limitations became more stringent throughout the course of the following few days. A family visit that had been scheduled weeks prior was abruptly cancelled. 2 longtime workers were informed that their positions were being reviewed. Camilla's private guests were accommodated in a guest suite that had previously been utilized for family get-togethers. Even though the names belonged to persons who had been freely entering the lodge for years, new aides started verifying names at the door. The message was clear. Before anyone could doubt her authority, Camilla was establishing control. The environment, according to one employee, was tight and cautious. Open communication among staff members ceased after verbal instructions were reinforced via private messages that disappeared from the regular administrative channels because they were afraid of losing their jobs. Some employees complied. Others started discreetly making copies. Catherine followed suit. All cancelled appointments were documented. Each change in staffing was dated. Each access request was listed next to the response it got. She collected security guidelines, storage lists, renovation notes, and the names of the people assigned to complete each modification. What had started out as a family dispute was turning into a file. Subsequently, a former employee of the lodge revealed the information that directly involved William in the conflict. Camilla's private office was not the only source of funding for the improvements. Invoices revealed the usage of royal household resources for changes that were never fully approved. Maintenance codes that were sufficiently broad to evade quick attention had been linked to payments. The list of required replacements included new furniture. Under structural maintenance, decorative work was visible. Employees tasked with official tasks were being diverted to assist Camilla with her personal arrangements. It was now an issue of authority rather than taste. William did not react with the kind of rage Camilla might have anticipated when he was shown the records. He fell silent. He went through every page. He questioned who had permitted the storage of Diana-related items, who had reassigned the employees, and who had approved the payments. Every response pointed to Camilla's office. William then asked for the original Windsor Lodge regulations. The documents themselves, not a synopsis. He required the funding conditions, the occupancy terms, the ownership record, and all associated amendments. Palace officials started looking. In Camilla's inner circle, it was first assumed that the assessment would validate what she had been telling people, that Charles had granted her extensive authority, that her position was safe, and that William would disagree but would be unable to do anything without publicly opposing the king. Then, deep within the residence file, an archivist discovered a line. Permanent ownership was not mentioned in the wording. Camilla was not given an unconditional lease. It described a familial arrangement that was subject to ongoing approval and appropriate usage of the property. There was another reference underneath that line. When family property was regarded as personal property, it involved abuse, unapproved expenditure, limited access, and the authority to revoke occupancy. It seemed that no one had ever read it in Camilla's office. When William discovered the clause, he did not confront Camilla immediately. He waited until staffing orders, funding records, and directives to store family belongings had been compared to the dwelling file. He didn't want any opportunity for misunderstandings, gaps, or simple denial. He had seen enough by the time the meeting was scheduled. Camilla thought the conversation would be about protocol when she walked in. William clarified that it had to do with behavior. One by one, he presented the papers to her, the cancelled appointments, the reallocated staff, the renovation fees, the access limitations, and the storage order associated with Diana's possessions. He then posed the query she had shied away from. Why did she have the right? Camilla did not provide a document in response. She responded with a status update. She claimed that Charles had no objections to the adjustments. The household understood her position and the residence had been made available to her. That was sufficient in her opinion. Every time she changed a room or replaced a staff member, the king's consent did not have to be recorded. William didn't agree. Windsor Lodge was not a personal prize, he reminded her. It contained protected items, official expenses, family history, and agreements between multiple households. Written conditions could not be eliminated by a verbal comprehension. Moving anything related to his mother without telling him was also not acceptable. At that point, Camilla altered her strategy. She cautioned that Charles would be embarrassed if the issue was pursued further. Any public disagreement about the lodge would give the impression that the king was unable to manage his own household. It would make headlines, escalate hostilities, and raise concerns about who was actually in charge at Windsor. The caution was selected. William comprehended. The family averted a commotion by backing down. He would be held